So we're going to talk about some common areas that we can reduce our risk and problem areas that we all have on our properties. The area around the house within 5 foot of the exterior wall is called your home ignition zone. There's a lot of studies have been done, a lot of science is out there that says if we address our home ignition zone, we can really increase our survivability and lower our risk. A good example of stuff that we don't want to store in the home ignition zone, again within 5 feet of the house, are propane containers and barbecues. Now, storing a barbecue is generally not a problem up against the side of the house, but when the barbecue is in operation, it's better if it's away from the home. And once again, propane containers, they should be stored away from the edge of the home. A lot of us have wood decks. This deck I can tell was recently cleaned, but the hazards for wood decks are wind-driven embers from a wildfire, land on and in between the deck boards on the stringers. What we can do to maintain our wood decks and reduce our risk are to clean those areas between the boards and blow any combustible litter off of the deck. Another very common area, all of us have the same problem if we live in a house, is we have gutters, and of course we have roof valleys and different levels of roof. You can see this roof here, we have combustible litter from our trees that have landed on the roof and actually filled up the gutter. This is a hazard because embers from a wind-driven fire will land on the roof and in the gutter and easily ignite this flashy fuel right here. And once this starts to burn, it'll continue until it's out. And the problem with it being on the roof is it easily gets under the edge of the roof and ignites the roof. The typical asphalt composition shingle roof is normally what they call a Class A roof. It's very ignition resistant, but the weak link on this roof, it's the combustible litter that's on top of it. To reduce our risk, we want to remove this from the roof and keep our gutters nice and clean. So this area is very common in and around Redding and in Shasta County. We have an unimproved vacant lot with tall grass and weeds and a lot of dead and down material on the ground. This is an absolute fire hazard. What the property owner can do is cut these weeds down to about 4 inches utilizing a DR trimmer or a weed eater. Obviously do it before the hours of 10 o'clock in the morning when the humidities are the highest. And then cut up and remove these dead and down materials. A lot of us see this all over town from the snow damage from a couple years ago. So we have bent and broken trees. With fuel, it's typically up in the air. Now it's closer or on the ground. We want to remove this. We want to limb up our trees to about 6 feet off the ground and then cut our weeds and shrubberies close to the ground so we separate that fuel continuity. We're not trying to prevent fire necessarily. There's going to be a fire at some point in time, but what we can do is we can lower the intensity and the speed with which the fire travels. So most all of us have wood fences. Wood fences make for good neighbors, but they represent at least some amount of hazard for us, particularly where they're attached to our homes. Normally a fenced yard is attached to our home on opposite ends, and that's where it's hazardous. So what we can do to reduce our risk, for those of us who have wood fences, is replace the first 5 feet on either side of the home with non-combustible fencing. Either wrought iron, chain link, even vinyl is better than wood. And the reason it's better than wood is over time this wood starts to decay and becomes punky. When we have wind-driven embers that are blown in from a wildfire, they'll land on these horizontal boards and easily ignite the wood fence. And then of course the wood fence is the slow-burning fuse that reaches our home. So if we get rid of that first 5 feet closest to the home, the wood fence can burn, but it won't get to our home. So another common hazard we have around our homes are vegetation that's within the home ignition zone, that 5 feet that's around the exterior of our home. This vegetation is nice and green, it's ornamental, it has an aesthetic look to it. But as far as fire is concerned, all that dead debris that's inside the shrubbery and on the ground is nothing but light, flashy fuel that wind-driven embers love to ignite. Another hazard close by are wood piles. This wood pile is accessible, it's convenient to the homeowners, it looks nice. And then of course we have some pine cones next to it. The problem with fire, this is a great receptive fuel bed for wind-driven embers. So this is a hazard for this home. What this homeowner could do is move this wood pile 30 feet from the home, certainly out of the home ignition zone, so they can increase their safety and reduce their risk. You know, another common hazard around our homes is landscape vegetation. Below that on the ground, we have a bunch of combustible leaf litter from our vegetation. And then we have it right outside of an opening into our home, a window. So what this homeowner can do to reduce their risk is keep this plant reduced in size and healthy, keep the dead litter cut out of it, keep the combustible litter picked up and away from the base of the home, and just be aware that oftentimes the weak links in our homes can be vent openings to the home and of course window openings. Another weak link is patio furniture within the home ignition zone. This poses a hazard because this is a perfect receptive fuel bed for wind-driven embers to land on and ignite. The hazard here is if ignited, it's right up against a wood deck. So what this homeowner can do to reduce their risk is move this away from the structure, away from the deck. And so if it does burn, it's not going to readily transmit that heat to the home.